everyone. My name is Rafal, and I would like to welcome to my another webinar. And today we're going to talk about modern retouching when it comes to headshots. It seems like there's few people already waiting, so thank you for joining. I'm going to have like about 45 minutes presentation, and I'm going to show you how I retouch my images nowadays, how this process has changed over the last few years. It's quite incredible what we can do nowadays and how fast we can retouch images, how precise we can retouch is completely something that completely changed the game in our industry. So we're going to talk about some of those stuff. There's definitely some controversy coming towards us from some of those companies. I'll touch some of those stuff. I don't want to get into those things, but everyone who is in that industry probably heard that. So we're going to talk a little bit about it. And and I'm going to show you pretty much my entire process, how I retouch my images. And at the very end, we're going to talk about some additional stuff, what we can do beyond retouching. And everyone who follows my work probably know I'm a huge fan of digital backdrops and, bringing something interesting and new to those images. Some people like it, some people hate it. There's kind of split 50-50 when it comes to likeness of this stuff. But I think, we have those options. So that's fascinating. And I know everything comes down at the end of the day to our clients, what they like. And I think that, giving them a variety of different things, which can bring their images to different level, give them some uniqueness, and give them um, something new to their image. Definitely. Hello, Mari from Texas. Welcome. We'll wait a few more minutes. It seems like there will be people joining, and then we kind of kick this off, and we're gonna go through this entire process. Some of those stuff I already talked in my previous webinars. That's something that probably you guys heard, but I'm going to kind of go for it because this is important part of the retouching process. And I think they needs to be mentioned. We need to kind of start from basically the whole thing and then just kind of break this down to smaller elements and discuss them step by step. Okay, so it's 5 after. I'm sure there's a lot of people who will join us later on. This webinar will be available online later on. So if you missed it and you didn't have a chance to watch it, you can always come back and check it out. Okay, there's Louise. Welcome. Thank you for joining. It seems like those webinars picking up some momentum. There's more and more people interested. I don't know if you like this format or not, but I've decided to do that because I can express pretty much everything what I want to say. You don't kind of squeeze this whole thing to kind of short format of content. I think this is way more, I would say, interesting and then give you way more value to the stuff what we do. Okay, so let's kind of jump in and start going through this whole thing step by step. So let me add this, and I'm gonna change. Hold on here just a little bit so you guys can see a little bit better. Okay, so let's kind of get this going and let's discuss this entire retouching process and how this whole thing looks today. Before I kind of get in, I want to just say few disclaimers. First of all, everything what I'm going to be sharing with you guys today is based on my experience. This is how I work. This is how I retouch my images. The work evolved over the years. I was retouching my images completely different a few years ago. Now this whole thing has changed. There's so many different options nowadays, and people can retouch images using different tools, different AI tools. There's definitely a lot of options out there. So I'm not going to say which one is best one. because again, everyone has kind of own workflow, everyone kind of works with own specific tools. So I'm not saying this one is better, this one is worse. Whatever using, whatever it's working for you, whatever you know makes gives you the results you're looking for, that's the most important part, right? So please don't suggest that so please don't kind of think I'm trying to kind of push certain things. I'm not. It's just more that this is the way I work. So I just want to be kind of clear on this, because I know there's comments coming in later on, and they try to people try to tell me like, are you pushing certain products? I'm not. I work with the products which work for me. I like them, I trust them, and that's why I choose to work with them. So that's the first thing. The second thing what I want to say is, the retouching process has changed a lot. And I don't know how many of you guys kind of new to this industry. You guys been in the industry for quite some times. For me, I've been retouching images for the last um, 10 years. And I went through fully manual kind of labor, I would say, where I was just retouching every headshot by hand, using tablets, using kind of like all this manual tools in Photoshop. And then I spent about between 30 minutes to about an hour on the image. But one thing what I want to say, that not only the process has changed, but what I highly recommend it, and I'm not saying this is just something mandatory, I highly recommend to learn the manual retouching process. And the reason I'm saying that is because then you understand how the retouching process actually will feel like. What do you have to pay attention to? What do you have to do? You basically train your eyes to see little details. And even we have those amazing tools nowadays where you can just, with the click of the button, retouch entire image. I deeply believe that everyone should know the basics, the foundation, the structure, and also train your eyes to see little details, because that's something that a lot of photographers kind of missing nowadays, because everything is basically done automatically. And having that knowledge and having that eye trained definitely is going to help you to get better results, because I think that um, most of us who are kind of getting into this, and I was the kind of the same way, we tend to over retouch images. And then with the time where you actually your eye is way more trained and see things differently, that's where you start kind of scaling back, and the retouching process looks much more, I would say, natural, looks more real. And especially nowadays, everyone kind of knows that we going for this authenticity. And our eye is really sensitive with the skin is over retouched, and then there's no texture to it, and it's like plasticky. Then we can sense it from the mile. Especially photographers, they're the kind of really trying to kind of pick every pixel apart, and just kind of like just find all these little things. But sometimes we have to leave a little bit things behind. Okay, so let's move on. So I told you a little bit about myself. I've been doing this for over the last, well, I've been doing photography for 20 years, but headshots I've been shooting for 10 years. Um, Trying to kind of add a little bit into it. I'm not going only after those like a typical headshot. I'm trying to make them a little bit more creative. I started basically with doing some interesting backdrops, different sets. But nowadays it's a little bit different. We can definitely create something artificially with the digital tools. So I'm always trying to push, basically bring something different to those images. As I said, there's certain clientele for this. Not all my clients like that. There's also lots of clients who are looking only for just a typical headshot where there is white, gray, or black background. Those are more for commercial work and for big industries, big companies, they like to have this consistency. They don't like kind of creativity behind it. So I think everyone kind of has own taste, but I see that this whole trend is changing, and it seems like basically everything is getting more towards this more artistic and more unique headshots where people can really stand out. Okay, but let's go back to our retouching process, and let's kind of unpack this step by step. Okay, so before we get into the retouching process, um, I want to say that one of the most important elements is lighting. And the reason is because the better the lighting is and the better you can light your subject, then you have way less work in Photoshop or in retouching process. So lighting is the first, I would say, retoucher, which basically makes your images look better. And I'll show you some examples later on where you have bad lighting, and how much harder it is to retouch those images, and when you have a good lighting, how easy it is to retouch your images. When you have your image light properly, then the retouching is just a kind of little additional element which you just kind of polish it, the image. You don't have to kind of like change everything and work harder, and then just kind of literally rip the image apart to bring something out of this, especially in headshots. As I said, the better lighting we have, the better results we're getting, and the retouching process becoming just a little additional element which just polish those like a little things here and there. And you will see later on like how close my images are from basically the raw image into the retouched image. There's not much of a difference. You will probably, most of you guys wouldn't even see the difference. um, but this is also something that I highly recommend to pay a lot of attention to your lighting, and we're going to kind of discuss all this stuff. So let's move on and let's talk a little bit about the lighting and how lighting impacting your retouching process, and why this is so crucial and how important it is to get this done right, because it's going to help you with the retouching process itself. Okay, so first thing what I want to actually, before we get into the lighting, is preparation for the session. So the makeup is the crucial element to basically also reduce your retouching process, because as you probably know, if someone comes into the headshot session non-prepared, the skin, let's say it's oily, there is some kind of like discolorations, there's a lot of things which is on the skin, then we of course have to do it. And I remember back in the days when I used to start with my headshot photography business, I never pay attention to this stuff. I'm gonna be honest with you, like, okay, whoever comes in, like for me the most important thing was the client come into my studio and work with me. I didn't pay attention to all this like details when it comes to makeup, because eh, I didn't kind of, I don't know, think about it through. I heard about it, but I just never pay attention to it. But as soon as I started working with the professional makeup artist, and she started like really nailing all these things, which I would have to basically do in Photoshop, completely changed the game. And nowadays, I basically, what I do for every headshot session, especially with females, I want to make sure that I have a professional makeup artist who can cover some of those stuff, can kind of fix the skin, and I know afterwards everything's gonna get better when it comes to the retouch process. And I want to show you um, examples, and those are the young girls. So if you imagine having someone who is older, someone who has more issues with the skin, it's becoming even harder. And I know some of those images what I'm showing you, they're a little bit artistic, but just to tell you the difference between someone who's unprepared and how they look like, and someone who has even like basic makeup is change everything, change the game. And also, what I want to point it out is whenever you're working with the makeup artist, try to find someone who also is willing to learn about photography, because I've learned that a lot of makeup artists, they coming in, they try to push the stuff with what they want to do. Sometimes they overdo things, and just makes my life even harder to retouch. So, having someone who not only do the makeup the right way, but also understand photography a little bit, and also work with the clients, because clients also want to make sure they want to look good, natural, and having someone who listens to the client needs, and then what the client has to say, and also working with photographer, knowing what he's going after, and kind of that person can keep that balance, is the perfect person. So try to find someone who does good job, good work, and you will see it's going to save you tons of time to the retouching process, because if the makeup is done properly, it's definitely is going to help you to reduce the time, and don't spend time on things which you shouldn't do. Just the makeup artist did their job, and they kind of like know exactly what to do. So that's something which is extremely important, and the main reason, as I said, I'm bringing this up, is the fact that this element of hatchet photography can really reduce the time you're going to spend on retouching your images. So make sure you have makeup artists, work with as many as you want till you find someone who does the good work. And it's going to be like a miracle for you, saving your time, and also for retouching those images. Okay, so let's go back to the lighting itself. So typically, and again, I'm going to just go roughly briefly through this. Probably everyone who heard this before already know this stuff. So I'm using typically 3 lights, sometimes 4, but that's my typical setup. Main light, I like Rembrandt lighting because it gives me a little bit of dimension. Then on the opposite side, 45 degrees, I do have kicker light, which gives you this really nice contrast. And sometimes I also use accent light on the other side. And the reason is I'm trying to separate my subject from the background as much as possible, because that's going to help me implement those digital backdrops. And we're going to talk about it a little bit later. But I just want to kind of point this out that most of my shoots nowadays, I'm using two kind of kicker lights on both sides, so the separation is obvious. And then when I have to remove the background or start implementing digital backdrops, it's much easier for AI to do that. So having that extra light definitely helps. And then also I have a background light to basically create that halo. Also there's like a little bit of separation from the backdrop. Yeah, that's my entire setup plus the reflector. I know some photographers, they're using another light underneath to like really control the entire scene, and an entire face. I don't do that. And the reason is, like, I know the results are a little bit better, but then I would have to have 5 lights, and this whole thing becoming a little bit more complex and complicated. And especially for commercial work or for corporate headshots, like, you want to kind of be able to set this whole thing up quickly, put this down very quickly too, because there's no time, and people come and go, and there's no time for play. So this setup, what I'm showing you right now, is my go-to setup, which I'm using 99% for my headshot. And couple more things which I would like to add. Again, I'm repeating myself. You guys probably have heard that. One of the main things, what is extremely important, and I've been saying this for years now, and I know a lot of photographers take that to their heart. Some of them they don't, but I can tell you from my personal experience, this is one of the crucial elements. The bigger the main light is, the bigger the softbox you have, you're going to get way better results, because light becoming much softer wraps the face much better. And I remember when I started my headshot photography journey, I started with really small softbox for the main light, and I was not getting the results. I'm telling you, was horrible. The light was harsh. Then I have to like retouch those images, like it was just horrible. And I was struggling with this for many, many months till I reach out to some fellow hatchet photographer who's been in this industry for much longer. And I say, hey, can you tell me like why I'm not getting those results? What is the main problem with not getting, because it's something off, something which doesn't work, something what doesn't give me the results, and I just see there's massive difference. And to be honest with you, I couldn't figure out what it is. I'm just like, okay, softbox is a softbox, like what's seems to be a problem. But it was. And the first thing what he told me was like, you know what, get way better main light. Like, this one what I'm using right now is 120 centimeters in diameter, so it's fairly big. And yeah, it's completely changed the game. As soon as I start shooting with those bigger soft boxes for the main light, the skin colors got better. The results were way better, and I never looked back. And nowadays, I am telling all the photographers to focus on that. And if you're going to get that right, so don't cheap on small softbox, get bigger, because you will going to get some really nice results, and then the retouching process afterwards going to be much much easier. One other additional element I want to say, I'm using nowadays constant lighting for a couple reasons. One is, you see what you're getting right on the spot. It's way better experience for the clients. I know that has nothing to do with the retouching process, but the lighting is definitely something that um, the constant lighting definitely adds a little bit more to the actual experience. And basically your clients and you're going to have way better experiencing working with on the shoot. Okay, so let's move on and let's talk a little bit more about the lighting. So I use two type of lightings. One is the flat lighting. I know a lot of photographers like that. It's really popular in headshots. So flat lighting is lighting where you pretty much killing all the shadows. Most of photographers, headset photographers, like that because it's much much easier to get achieve better results. It's much more cleaner, I would say. I don't really like this lighting, and I'm not saying I don't use it. I do sometimes, but I've found I like to having dimension in my images where the face has this kind of like a little bit 3D effect. Flat lighting kills that, right? So that's something which I'm not a big fan of it. But if you're shooting people for which are older, I don't know, the tons of wrinkles, and you want to kill all of it, then this lighting definitely helps that, and that also helps with the retouching process, right? So that's we kind of going through that direction when it comes to the retouching. At the end of the day, you have way less work. So bonus, because we don't want to spend too much time retouching our images. So this is, I think that everyone kind of have own style, right? And I'm not saying flat lighting it's the wrong way to go. I know majority of photographers use that, and I use that too sometimes if the client shows me images which, for example, they say, hey, this is what I like, and I can see it's a flat lighting, and they show me 5 different images and they all have this flat lighting, then I'm gonna use it, right? There's no question about it. But if they like something a little bit more dramatic, a little bit more dimensional, that's what I do when it comes to using those you know Rembrandt lighting, and I'll show you in a second. So that definitely helps with the retouching process. Flat lighting, if someone has bad skin, and then you don't want to have any shadows, you don't want to deal with that part, that's the lighting you want to definitely go for. Okay, but my favorite one is Rembrandt lighting. So you've seen on the previous image, so is basically 45 degrees towards my subject. There's kicker light on the background and the reflector, and then you're getting this really nice interesting dimension to the image. I'm gonna show you some images a little bit later, but that's my favorite lighting. And I like to work with shadows, especially with I nowadays when we have those AI tools for the retouching process. It's not big of a deal, but you still have to figure it out. Like how to properly set this up to make this work. I'm not going to go into details. Like, you can watch another webinar which I've done in the previous about lighting, and then I talk about that stuff. um, the one thing what I want to point it out, and that's going to be related to the retouching. um, I don't follow any ratios, because I know a lot of photographers asking me about it, like, oh, what's the ratio and all this stuff. To be honest with you, I don't use light meter. I don't use any ratios. I basically go with the gut feeling. So I take a shot, I take a look at it, and I like basically adjust it based on what I feel. Also people with different skin colors, the light affects the skin differently. So, I don't really kind of trust any instruments to control my lighting. Everything kind of goes pretty much straight based on my gut feeling. I'm not recommending this if you don't feel like it. I think that more coming from the experience working with tons of clients. And then when I see something is right, that's when I kind of go for it. Okay, so going back, four lights, three lights sometimes. So it was main light, kicker light, and the background light. And also, I want to point it out that I will kind of keep this lighting a little bit closer to my subject. I've seen a lot of photographers, and I don't understand that part, when they just have the lighting very far from the subject, and that creates a little bit more kind of like a dimmed light. The shadows are kind of off. Bring this light closer to your subject, and then you will see the difference. You can see really, you can control this a little bit better. But if you want to learn more about it, I highly recommend it going back to my the previous lighting webinar, and I talk about this, all these little details and nuances, and then tricks in that webinar. Okay, let's move on. So there's two companies which, kind of like take over the entire market. The one of them is Retouch for me, and the other one is Evoto. And those are the tools I've been using for my retouching process. And most of the time, 99%, I'm using a retouch for me. And that's what I'm going to be focused on today. And I'm going to show you my entire process, how I retouch. Evoto is equally good, especially for those high volume shots where you can kind of set up the preset and then just kind of like go through a bunch of shots from the session. So the Evoto has some kind of, controversy going on. They released some headshot image generators. I'm not going to go to the details. I did like interesting podcasts with Yannick Vasho. I don't know, you guys seen that. We talk a little bit about it. So it's kind of unfortunate what happened. I think a lot of people lost a little bit of trust towards them. But having said that, they still pretty good tools. I highly recommend them. They do amazing job. And whatever you want to go with, it's entirely up to you. I prefer Retouch for me, and there's a couple of reasons. Retouch for me, I found it a little bit more simpler than Evoto. Evoto is very complex. You can go to all these little details, and you can just like really start retouching your images to the high level, just kind of going for all these different slides, and then just retouching this very complex way. Retouch for me is a little bit simpler. Still has all this amazing tools. You don't need all of them, and they have two kind of ways to dealing with all this stuff, right? So let's kind of dive in. And Evoto is similar, right? So it's something that you can use on both ends. But I don't know, for some reason I like Retouch for me a little bit better, even though results are similar, right? So you cannot really compare, that one is better, the other one is kind of, I don't know, less effective. They both work pretty well. It's just personal preference, what works better for you. um okay, so when it comes to the retouching process, and we're going to focus on Retouch for me, but before we do that, I just want to kind of get into the process in general, how the retouching looks like. So this is what I've learned from my manual retouching. So this is the process how it looked like, and you can actually apply the same system into using AI tools. So basically, the first thing what I was doing, sorry, I was basically removing all the big stuff. So was the healing, where you were using the healing brush, and then you were just kind of cleaning the big stuff. The next step was dodge and burn. So you were working with shadows, you were working with all this, like, deficiencies when it comes to the skin. And again, I could spend hours doing dodge and burn. Nowadays we don't have to, but that was just the next step. The next one was eye brilliance, which was just working on your subject eyes, bring a little bit more brightness, bringing a little bit more spark into your subject eyes. And that was like kind of the next step. The next one was the color adjustment, which in this case is skin tone. And again, that was just playing with all sorts of different colors. That was the most difficult part I found when it comes to the retouching process, dealing with colors and skin tones and all this stuff. Going back to my lighting thing, I want to say I also don't use any gray card. I don't do any of this stuff. Basically, what I do, just to kind of give you the idea how I approach this part of photo shoot, is I'm setting up my LED lights to 5000 Kelvin and setting up my camera manually white balance to 5000 Kelvin. So there's literally no problem. And, even if sometimes we get a little bit, um, the results, they're a little bit off, they vary slice, they're not big of a deal. Plus, you can, kind of fix that in the retouching process. I don't highly recommend that, but nowadays we have all these amazing tools we do that. But going back to the retouching process, yeah, the skin tonality was the next step in the entire process. And then the last one, and the retouch for me called it, and I don't know why they called that way, it's called portrait volumes, which basically brings back a little bit of contrast. Because if you do all this like dodge and burn, and then skin tonality and all this stuff, sometimes image gets a little bit more flat, and you need bring this kind of like dimension back to the image. So you just work on the contrast, but retouch for me call this portrait volumes. So this is basically what you need for your entire process of the retouching. And each actually of those um, tasks you can basically have as a one tool. And the retouch for me has those tools which you can like literally implement into your Photoshop. Or they also create, and I'm going to show you in a second, a platform where you can upload your image, and you can do this literally online on the cloud, right? So those are two options. I prefer do this in Photoshop, because if there is some additional issues, I can kind of work on it inside of Photoshop. But then again, you have to just have subscription for the Photoshop. I know some people try to kind of escape this, and we can do that, right? Like, we can definitely do all this stuff without Photoshop nowadays, which is also kind of um, interesting. And I would never expect something like this even will be available back in the days, because we used to do all of it in the Photoshop. That's maybe I still do that in Photoshop. I don't know. Maybe those are like kind of old habits, something that I used to do for so many years, and it's really difficult for me to kind of get out of it. But this is the entire process, and you basically need just those five tools, and you're good to go. And yeah, then you can basically retouch your entire image using just those four tools. And nowadays, just to kind of give you an idea, because I set this whole thing up literally as an action, where you just go through step by step. You turn on the action to record this entire process, and then whenever like I have this whole thing set it up, I can go through tons of images literally within minutes, right? Which is, it's just absolutely insanity. Retouching process for photographers back in the days was the most consuming thing into entire photo shoot. Yeah. So nowadays we have more time doing other things. and we don't have to really kind of like spend too much time retouching. And also, what I want to say, that those tools getting better and better and better. So back in the days, they were still a little bit iffy. They have a lot of kind of like problems, and they were not efficient well enough. Now I have to say that they're pretty good. They not I don't want to say they are like super efficient, like high end efficient, but they are good enough for corporate work, some basic stuff. And then sometimes you can push it to give you this little bit of extra, um, additional, I would say, results. But that's, you have to just kind of play a little bit more with it. And then if you have to just do some small adjustments manually, then you can kind of do that. Okay, so let's go. So this is what I want to kind of talk about it first. So this is the option where you can go to Retouch from me, and you can upload your image to the cloud, and you can just basically use all those slides and just kind of retouch your images based on what you're looking for, right? So have all these tools kind of implemented into the system, and you can just basically move those slides back and forth to get the results you're looking for. Then you can record it, and you can just kind of use as some kind of action thing for following images. So that's fantastic. But then the one thing what a lot of people kind of look at it from different perspective is because you have all this like credits which you have to purchase, right? I don't know exactly how much it costs right now. It's still, I would say, doable if you're running a business. Instead of spending hour on retouching images, you can use this platform, and within a few seconds retouch the images for, I don't know, 20 cents, 15 cents. I don't know what the price is. I think the more you buy, the better, the better deal you're getting. But that's kind of allows you to skip completely Photoshop, right? You're uploading high resolution image, even raw, and then you go for this entire process. So that's the first step you can do. So that's one option. But now we're going to go into the Photoshop. So basically in Photoshop, you have to upload, you have to purchase those each, um, how you call it, those plugins. And then basically they are um pretty much just basically implemented into your Photoshop. You go to filter, and on the bottom you have retouch for me, and you have all this tools. So basically when you have an image, you just click on it, and then you can just perform specific task. So first one is the heal. So basically what you do, so when you click on it, you will get this kind of little panel, and then you can just basically push it, like when you have in this Apex system, you can just slide it. Here you have another slider which you can push it sensitivity, and as soon as you are happy with the results, then you basically click OK. And also on the bottom, I want to point this out. You have, like, the headshot. You have also the 3/4 portrait or full body shot. So the AI system basically allows you to choose what type of image it's going to be working on. And then you can just basically push it as much as you want to get this entire task done through AI. The one thing what I want to point out when it comes to healing, so what I noticed, and it's didn't change much over the last couple of years, and maybe that's something that they don't know how to figure it out, but the AI cleans up everything, right? That's one of the things. And when we have some birthmarks which belongs to people, and what I mean by that, like some people identify themselves like they have something on their face which is like beautiful birthmark, and yeah, they won't keep that. I have to tell you that this system basically cleans everything up, right? So you got to pay attention to those things, because I had a lot of clients who, like, maybe not complain, but they said, hey, you know what, I have this something on my face which I like. It's part of me, it's part of who I am, and can you bring this back, right? So if you work on layers, it's definitely much easier process to bring this back. But I want to kind of point this out, because this is something that it's extremely, I would say, important. And I know, and I've noticed that the healing tool cleans everything, right? And yeah, sometimes might cause you some, maybe not issues, but something that yeah, you need to pay attention what exactly cleans up, because sometimes we don't want to have everything removed from the person's face. Okay, so the next one is dodge and burn. Again, it's pretty solid. It's not perfect, but definitely do the job. Especially, I've found, and we're going back to the lighting. If you have good lighting and the person, it's lit properly, then the dodge and burn, the shadows are soft and just kind of cleans up them very, very gently. um, and then again, you can just pick up warmth, so you know how far you want to go. And also you can push it how much dodge and burn should be done, so you have control over this. Maybe it's not the control we used to have, that you could really point out specific things, because for example, like, I would clean it up this more under her eyes and stuff, but leaving back some of those things also is extremely important, because that's what brings this authenticity into the image. So I have to learn myself how to leave back some of those stuff, because I found when you retouch manually and you do this all the time, you going bonkers, because you see everything and you try to clean up everything, and then that's when everything gets pushed too much, and those images, they don't look real, they look fake, plasticky and all this stuff, right? So it's just too fake. So this tools, I have to tell you, one thing what I found is that they don't push too much. They definitely keep the balance, and also you can scale it back, and make sure that the image is polished but it's not like overdone. Okay, so the next one is eye brilliance. So you basically get the eyes a little bit more brightened. Again, it's not perfect, but it's still good enough, because when you do this manually, you could go right into the eye and just like literally, you know c- make this eye like literally perfect, right? This one does good job, remove some veins and all this stuff. So it's pretty decent, and especially like we don't see much. You just bring just a tiny bit. So what happens is the focal point turns into your subject eyes. And as everyone knows, the eyes are the most important, I would say, element on the face. That's where we are drawn into, and that's something what it's important to kind of bring some brightness to it, because that's where we want people to look at it, right? So again, that's amazing job. I have to say that it's not perfect, but it's good enough to bring that little bit of, as I said, brightness to the eyes, which definitely helps to make this whole thing looks better. Okay, the next one is the skin tone. That's the big one. Again, you can play with slider and just kind of find the balance you're looking for. But if you do this right from the get-go, and you have the proper lighting, your camera is set up to those, I would say, manual settings, and that's what I mentioned a few minutes ago. I set up everything manually. That's extremely important, so you don't have to do much of a work. But definitely, what I found, what I've learned, and this is something what is interesting, because again, that comes down to the makeup artist. So usually what happens, and I'm sure you guys have learned that too, the makeup artist will do amazing makeup on the face, and what happens is the neck kind of completely is in a different color, or it's, you can see it's off when it comes to tonality. And that was one of the biggest issues I was dealing every single time when I was doing shooting headshots, that the skin on the face is like vibrant and clean and all of stuff, and the neck is completely left out. So one, you can fix that using those AI tools, but what I would highly recommend it is make sure when you work with your makeup artist to basically, whenever they put the foundation, tell them, look, you know what, the putting foundation and creating the specific skin tonality for the subject is not just the face, it's the neck area too. Whatever is visible, whatever skin, we see, make sure it's all in one kind of color. But at the same time, if they missed it, this tool does amazing work. I can tell you, like, I was just blown away how this, tools could literally figure it out, that there's different tonality on the neck, and then, just kind of match it up like, like a miracle. Okay. The next one is the portrait volume. So you can probably see, it's again, very, very tiny thing. Is basically adding a little bit of contrast. So bringing some of those things which we flatten and give it a little bit back, so the image looks a little bit more dimensional. So that's something what this tool again do pretty good. As you probably see, it's blend 30, so like I don't push it too much because you can go really far, and looks too weird. There's too much of a contrast. It's just something that you barely touch, just to kind of get a little bit of touch to it, just so you can see it, but it's not overdone. So this is pretty much the entire process. One thing what I want to also say, which is extremely important, and this is what I've learned doing retouching manually, whatever you do, scale it back always. Because what happens is, if we work on high resolution image and then we push all these, sliders, and then we try to like make it really good, not to mention, most of us working on high resolution screens, so you see literally every detail. And then when the client literally shrink the image and basically reduce the size of it, reduce the resolution to it, everything gets even, kind of like more visible, right? So if you feel this is okay, this is good enough, or this is like retouched properly, when they reduce the size and they're gonna kind of make this image smaller, all those things what we've done gonna get extremely more visible. So just make sure whatever you do, scale it back. So if you, let's say, I don't know, done some process, and then I don't know, you scale it to I don't know, 50%, and you think this is good, this is kind of good enough, scale it less, because that's what's going to kind of like bring this whole things what we've done to the image. It's going to be more visible, it's going to be more obvious. So keep that in mind, that because we're working on high resolution images, they're not going to stay the same way. They're going to look different when we reduce the resolution of the shot. So, okay, so now I would like to kind of hear what you guys going to say. Is so this is raw image on the left hand side and the retouched image on the right hand side. Oh, sorry. So raw image is on the left hand side. So before and after. So you probably see there's not much of a difference, and even if we would kind of like scale up. So I have to say, on that particular session, we had really good makeup artist. She did amazing work. So if you see, the retouch image is not day and night, right? So that's something that it also tells me that the lighting was done properly, the makeup was done properly, and then your retouching is just a gentle touch to bring the flavor out of the image. So that's something. Okay, hold on, back. Yeah, so this is pretty much the entire lighting process. So you see here the how the setup look like. Then you can see I did like a little close up, and that's here, it's a raw image, and that's the final shot. So the reason I want to show this, because a lot of people sometimes like accusing me, well, hey, you know what, those images, they don't, this is not real, but this is how this whole process look like. And again, she's young, she's got the healthy skin, so I don't want to say that that doesn't also kind of impact the shot. But in my opinion, the retouching shouldn't kind of completely change the image, especially for corporate and commercial headshot session. Those things should be very subtle. They shouldn't be kind of like crazy. But again, and I know I'm repeating myself, and you guys probably sick of listening to this, everything comes down to the proper lighting. That's the kind of the main element, which is the preparation for the retouching, and the better job you will do when it comes to the lighting, the less work you will have doing the retouching process. And especially nowadays with all these AI tools, it's a pleasure, I would say, retouch your images rather than spending hours and hours and hours digging into this. But also that comes from the experience, I have to say. The more you shoot, the more you see those things, the more you pay attention to those little details to fix them. Definitely gonna add to it. But one of the biggest, I would say, problems with photographers dealing with, and they have to deal with afterwards, is the bad lighting, which affects their shot. And then they have to, not all they don't have to like retouch the image, they have to fix it. And that's where the problems kind of kicks in. And I can tell you that you can have the best AI tools, you can have the best, I don't know, like, skills. Everything comes down to making sure that the foundation, the raw image, is something that it's easy to work with, right? And the better shots you're going to get straight from the camera, the retouching process is going to be less problems. Okay, so some kind of pro tips when it comes to retouching with AI: shoot raw. Definitely, I highly recommend it to do that. That's the kind of starting point. I know some photographers don't like that, and I know raw images take a lot of space on your hard drive, and stuff like that. But shooting raw definitely gives you way more control. Starting with raw adjustment, this is also how I retouch my images. So I take my raw image and just kind of go through lighting adjustments, just kind of add a little bit of more brightness, adding a little bit. I don't add contrast, or I don't play with any white balance stuff most of the time. It's literally opening the shadows a little bit, adding a little bit, whites, or working whites and blacks, just to kind of create this little bit of balance, especially if someone has a dark hair and you want to just bring this, um, details out of the hair. Working in raw and opening up those blacks and shadows definitely kind of can give the image a little bit more better results. Then follow a set of order. So this is what I mentioned before. Make sure you do this in this right order, because if you start doing like dodge and burn, and then you start doing healing, or contrast, and then like like, you have to do this in the right order. And I know a lot of photographers don't do that. But this is something what I've learned when I was basically retouching my images manually. This is something that I've learned, and I apply this to retouching with my AI tools, and it works like a charm. So make sure you start with healing, dodge and burn, and then we going all the way. Then we're going to eye brilliance, skin tone. It's literally at the very, very end. And that's what we also do when it comes to manual retouching. I remember back in the days, the totality and working on colors was with when everything was done. We never start with, playing with colors and then working on dodge and burn and skin issues, right? That's never happened. And then lastly, we add a little bit of contrast just to bring this dimension back. um, we talk about it, keep adjustments subtle, don't kind of push it. And we've discussed this. Why? That's kind of obvious. Um, and the retouch batches individually. So what I mean by that, so like, I know sometimes we shooting in different locations, right? So for example, you have a photo shoot in some kind of commercial space or some offices. So what I do whenever I'm shooting headshots at the company, and there's, I don't know, 20, 30 employees, typically what I do, I take one of those shots and I do the action for this particular session. So I'm basically going through all these steps, but doing this individually and creating an action, and then just kind of follow through all of it later on. So I don't have like one action for like whatever I'm shooting, because every location is different. And even if I'm using the same lighting, the same setup, everything's kind of the same. Trying to each session apply my own kind of like the retouching set, and then applying this to everybody else, and then you're just kind of going through if this is working or not, if it's not working. Because let's say we have people who have, I'm sorry, have different skin color, and there is like people who are extremely, I would say, have like really white skin tones, and there's people who have really dark skin tones. Those AI tools might affect this a little bit different. So you have to just pay attention. But definitely creating this kind of like one specific set for each session I'm working on, because there might be something kind of like which might impact the image. And then, the last thing is review before delivery. So this is exactly what I'm talking about, because sometimes when we go very quickly through this stuff, we might miss something. So before I basically send those images to my client, I typically go through them, just kind of like just make sure they're good, right? Because like, you know, I know we're going through a lot of images, and sometimes we would love to automate everything what we can, and to the point that those images even send out to the client without us being involved in the process. But because what do we do? We have to have some kind of quality control, and I think our eye is the best. Even those AI tools do amazing work, we still have to keep eye on it and make sure that each image coming out of hands is done perfectly. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about how we can elevate those images. So the ones which you see here before, this is pretty standard stuff. So this is more commercial work for corporate client. They typically want like this solid color backdrop. But as you probably noticed, I really like to push this a little bit more, and I'm creating those digital backdrops. We're not going to go into very, very um, deep details. And I'm kind of going to offer you some participation into more advanced class, where I go through this entire process step by step, and I'm not only teach you how to create them, but how to fix them, how to. It's this whole thing. It's a 3 hours class where you can just basically go through this whole thing step by step, and and you can also make money out of this. And I'm gonna just share that with you in a second. But I always offer those to my clients. So if I have a client who did corporate headshot session with me, I always tell them, hey, you know what? This is also what I do. If you are interested, I can provide you with some options, and you can use that either for your, I don't know, social media platforms. I know a lot of people like don't want to use them for the corporate stuff, but they like the look. Like, hey, you know what, maybe I can use that for my social media platform, just to kind of separate myself and look a little bit more different. Lately I found that more and more companies, they're looking for this type of look, where you can implement those digital backdrops into their employees, which kind of showcase their professions. And then like, for example, like this image was for the corporate session, this one for an artist, this one, she's also like a artist. This guy also, like, he wants something like a little bit more cinematic, because he was getting into the acting industry. So basically you can create those backgrounds for each, or kind of each profession, or you can very create like a story behind. So this is part of the retouching process too, and we're going to talk a little bit about it, and then I'm going to tell you at the end how this whole thing works later on. So this is how you kind of create them. This is the process. So you starting with the raw image, like I showed you. I'll show you in a second here how this whole thing looks like. But you can just create endless amount of different backdrops, and then you can just like basically provide to the client which ones they like, what type of things they prefer. You can create this interesting story behind it. So there's a lot of stuff what you can do with this. It's absolutely fascinating for me, that we got to the point that you really don't have to build any sets, you don't have to buy any painted backdrops anymore. You can like literally create them artificially and just bring some interesting flavor to the image, and also create some kind of story. So this is like I'm using generative fill to create those. Then I'm using specific prompts. The process is pretty simple. There's definitely something what you would have to understand when it comes to fixing some of those stuff, and something that it's definitely kind of make this whole thing work, to make this look um, authentic. I know some of them they do, some of them they don't. The interesting thing is that like if we're working with the blurry backdrop, then it's much easier to kind of like make it this look a little bit more authentic. I know the more sharper they are, it's much more difficult. But for the headshots, I found those blurry backgrounds work better, and the reason is because the focal point, we're kind of creating the contrast between the backdrop and your subject, which makes to look at those shots much easier. So the backdrop is not as destructive, and it's not like just make this image too busy. And this is something what I've been learning too. I've create like hundreds of thousands of those backdrops, and also what I've learned over the time, how what to pay attention to, how to make them symmetrical, how to make them balanced, how to create those lines. There's all sorts of different elements which we have to understand. And sometimes we see, okay, it's working, sometimes it's not working. But having the ability to pretty much creating those artificially, and having this as a part of the retouching process is something extremely, I think, interesting, because everyone can be unique, everyone can create something different for your clients, and kind of also improve your business. So that's something what is extremely, I think, interesting when it comes to those digital backdrops and these retouching processes, that definitely can put you on a pedestal. And I'm not saying beat up the competition, but definitely can improve the quality of your work, can make those images look a little bit more interesting, and definitely make this whole thing looks um, I don't want to say much more professional, but more kind of eye catching, where the client's like, oh my god, this is so cool. And I can tell you like another story, like a lot of like my clients like, oh, I don't need any digital backdrops. But then when you create them and they see those images, all of a sudden this whole thing is switched, right? And like most of them, they're using those on their social media or their websites or whatever, because they have something interesting about them. Okay, so this is how the process looked like. So you see, this is the actual image. This is how I shot this, and then I create this digital backdrop and actually implement that into the shot. So the one cool thing about this type of work and this retouching process, you really don't have to shoot on the green screen or do all this crazy stuff we used to do back in the days. You can shoot anywhere, and even if the background is busy, those AI tools nowadays, they can really well recognize the subject. And if you have good lighting, so let's say you have two contrast lights on each side where you can see there's two highlights, it's much easier for the AI to pick up the contour of the subject, and basically just implement this backdrop. Like back in the days, to cut this off would probably takes hours. Nowadays it's just a click of the button. And there is some, of course there's some issues all the time, but also you can use AI to fix some of those stuff. So this is something what it's much easier to do. Okay, so the next thing is I have those libraries nowadays. where I have all sorts of different backdrops for each client, for each profession. And I have this massive library of those headshot of those backgrounds. And you can literally implement them into your workflow. And you can offer them to your clients. And also you can sell them. This is also a good way of making some extra money. And yeah, you can share those with your clients. And yeah, it's definitely something that I highly kind of recommend. So let's kind of put some final thoughts on this, and then I'm gonna just share with you one more thing, and then we'll go to Q&A. And if you guys have any more questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. Okay, so final thoughts when it comes to the retouching process. The good lighting speeds up the retouching process. So we talk about it. I know I'm repeating myself at this point, but start everything with good lighting. If you have a good lighting, then the retouching process is just a cherry on the cake, as I always say. And it's not taking too much time, and it's much easier also for AI to retouch this image quicker, much more efficient, and you're going to get way better results. So making sure you have clean lighting, some basically, we talk about all those elements, which are crucial to get this lighting done properly. And then also going to help with the AI to kind of work on those images much more efficient. And I can tell you, I've done some tests with some bad images to try to retouch, and looks horrifying, right? So, if you shooting headshots and your images, they don't have a good lighting, there's no way you can use AI tools, or you can even fix things manually, but it's you're not going to get the results. I can tell you that. um so proper setup ensures consistency. So try to figure out your lighting setup, so it's efficient. You can repeat this stuff. You can just literally go anywhere and get the same results. I know it takes time, I know it takes practice, I know it's definitely some work you have to do, but one of those elements which I mentioned somewhere during that webinar, one of the key element, and I know like for some photographers is difficult to kind of get there, is the main light. That's something that definitely, the bigger softbox, the better. I would even say that the size of the softbox is way more important than the light you actually using to shoot. That's what I found. And then from there, if you're going to have good lighting on the person, the rest of it's like, go go go. And then the next step in the retouching process is the digital backdrops. It's a big part of my journey and my business. I love this stuff. And you can definitely bring something, and because we have those AI tools and we can implement them easily, efficiently, they look authentic, they look interesting. I know there are some people who like, oh, this is too busy, this is not what my client's looking for. And I get it, it's not for everybody, I understand that part. And I'm not saying that everyone should use them if this is not your style, but I would highly recommend it to play with them, because they definitely bring something new to the image, definitely change the story, definitely change the feel of the image. And you can really create something interesting, not only for your portfolio but also for your clients. And I can guarantee you that a lot of my clients absolutely love it, even if they don't know at the beginning. I've noticed a lot of clients, they're like, oh, I don't know, I'm not sure. But then when you show them, it has this visual impact. So again, we're going back to the lighting first, everything else is second. So we start with lighting, and then you can start using those AI tools to take those images to the next level. And as I mentioned, those tools are amazing nowadays. I can tell you, I don't have words, and I don't even know how different that is nowadays, that you don't really have to just sit hours and hours in and out and just retouch those images. Even though, as I said at the very, very beginning, I highly recommend to learn the manual labor and learn to, retouch your images manually, because then it gives you the training for your eye, right? Like that's the most important part. And I highly recommend that. I know a lot of photographers don't want to do that, and then like, why would I want to spend and learn all this stuff? But you have to learn the basics to understand the big process, right? So that's the way I look at it. Okay, so the final thing, if you are interested to learn more about those digital backdrops and you're going to go through this 3 hour class, please check out my website. I would be more than happy to see you there. You can join. Of course, there's a fee involved. There's some discounts going on if you are interested. And yeah, I can show you the entire process, how to do that. Plus, like I'm starting this another kind of like side of my business where I'm selling those backdrops to my clients. And if you're looking to make some extra money, and you have some free time to dedicate it, I can guarantee you can easily make between 5 to 10 grand a month selling those digital backdrops. So if you on the kind of slow end of your business and you want to still stay in this industry and do something which brings you money, that's something I would highly recommend it to learn. Plus it's going to definitely help your business to thrive, because I'm sure your client's going to love that too. So look into this, check it out. If you have more questions, I'll be more than happy to answer this. I do those seminars once a month. The next one is of February 8th. There's only 10 spots available, just so you know, so don't wait too long if you're planning to do that, because I also want to have a smaller group where I can just dedicate my time to each of these individuals to really show them and teach them, so when they leave that they know exactly what they know exactly what to do and how to move forward. Plus we still have some kind of consultations afterwards, so if you have you're stuck with anything, then you can definitely reach out. Okay, so thank you so much. So now, like, I will wait for some questions. Let's see, because I didn't pay attention what was happening here. Um, there's some issues with the link. Okay, I'll make sure next time I'm gonna be resending. So one of the reason, and I know the interesting thing is that I'm sending those emails, I think just once or twice. That's it. And I know from my own experience, some of those webinars, they bombard you with emails, and I hate that personally. So maybe what I can do in the next time, I will send you like a reminder day before with the link with all this stuff. But I don't really want to bombard anybody, with tons of emails every single day, because this webinar, I think people who sign up for this, they, I don't know, they feel responsible, and if they want to join, they can put that in their calendar and then make sure they can join it. But I have to block some of those, I would say, people I kind of get involved with their webinars, because they just bombard you with like 10, 20 emails a day, and I hate this, right? So please, I'm trying to be respectful, and I'm not trying to be kind of like, I would say, douchebag, where it's gonna just got your email and then start bombarding you every single day because I have a webinar on Sunday. I'm not that kind of person. So I hope you guys understand, and this is nothing kind of personal, but I hate that personally. So I'm trying to be respectful to your emails, because we're getting tons of them nowadays, and then nobody, I would say, not we don't like it, but I think some people just overdo it, and it's just getting on my nerves. And yeah, I don't want to kind of be the same person. Yeah, so Maria said, like, oh, she loves how similar they are. Yes, absolutely. And that's the whole point. I think that's the most important element, that the retouching, as I said, it should be just a little tiny touch to elevate the image. It's not something that completely should change the image, that the person from the raw image and the image on the retouch image is completely not recognized. Like I've seen those shots, and I yeah, I don't recommend that. So very subtle stuff. Again, start with lighting, and then the rest of it, just the tiny touches here and there, just to polish the image. um so does retouch for me have options for different backgrounds like a photo? So okay, so retouch for me doesn't have that. I think they will get there eventually, like a photo. I did some tests on Evoto when it comes to the backdrops, and they were horrible. And then there's a lot of things what people don't understand when it comes to the backgrounds, and this is something what I've been learning for the last few years too. That they have like a simple stuff, like very very generic, I would say, backdrops, and they don't look, I would say, authentic in my opinion. Plus, when you're doing them on your own, you're creating your own style. You can keep them. You can kind of like, you can even take those backgrounds which you create, put them in Evoto, and then you can just like literally using those. So that's another option. So that's why like I'm doing those additional seminars where I teach people how to actually do those backgrounds, how to create them, what to pay attention for, how to fix them, how to make them balance, how to make them symmetrical, how to make them specific color tonality. So you will learn how to do them your way, right? Those ones which are created by those artificial ones like Evoto, I think they just have bunch of them, and then you can just use whatever they feel like it. But most of them, they don't work well. I found, yeah, like I tried, and at least I wasn't impressed. Maybe some other people they are. Maybe maybe I'm too picky, and because I'm doing them, I pay attention to a lot of details which they don't, right? And I talk to some of those companies which kind of do the same stuff, and when I start telling them about the symmetry, about this, like focal points, about all this, like how blurry they should be, they had no clue, right? That's something that I've learned on my own from my experience working on them. Okay, so next one. Do you find that 120 centimeters is good or minimum size for the sub? I think it's the ideal size in my opinion. It's fairly big. It's not too small, but that's something what I think would be the starting point. Like, if you want to shoot headshots and then you want to get this done right, that's what I would go for. If you go bigger, then of course, but you have to also consider, where you're shooting, if you travel to places or you're shooting from your studio, because most of my work I have to go to my clients. So I go to corporations and places, and then I have to drag all this stuff with me, right? So I also have to consider how to kind of like take them to places and set them up. So again, I'm not recommending, but I'm using non-light, and then they have this like quick, how you call it, the quick kind of like thing where you can just like literally open them up in the second, and then put them down, right? So they really went above and beyond to creating something which is for people like me who need to set it up quickly and then take things down quickly. And yeah, the quality is pretty good. Okay, next one. What is the minimum size you would suggest for the modifier or your main light? Okay, so this is what we've just talked about it. Um, how do you shoot in portrait or landscape orientation? So basically, I do both, to be honest with you. But nowadays, with this generative fill, doesn't really matter because you can fix all this stuff. If you want to, let's say you're shooting, let's say portrait, and then you want to make it like landscape, you can use AI to like literally expand it. But it's I shoot both, to be honest. Depends on the session, but like I shoot a little bit landscape, a little bit portrait, depends on the person what they're looking for, but I do both. Okay, is retouch for me a plugin Photoshop or a standalone platform like Evoto AI. It's both. And that's what it's cool about it, right? So you have that Apex, that's the kind of like the website, or I don't know, platform where you can upload your images, but also you can purchase um, basically those plugins. They're a little bit more expensive. I know they have all sorts of different discounts going on. They also like, you can usually, around Christmas they have 40-50% off. So you can basically check them out, and it depends what works better for you. You want to have something that you have on your Photoshop nonstop and you don't have to pay extra, you pay once and you're done. Or you can, if you want to save money, and you don't want to pay a lot at front, you can just, you know um, basically go to Apex, buy, purchase those credits, and kind of use them. I don't know the prices, to be honest with you. You have to check it out, but I think, they also have some deals. You can buy more. But also, I think what they do nowadays, and I would highly recommend that to do as well, why don't you check it out, and they can give you free access for like a month or something. Like, I know they're giving this free stuff all over the place, so people can actually test it. So before you make a decision what works better for you, I think you can test both and see what works better for you. Okay, starting today, would you use large TV as a backdrop or AI backdrops? Maybe an obvious answer, but just wanted to know how you feel about A versus B. Okay, so that's great question. Um, so personally, I would definitely go with the um, AI backdrops, and the reason is there's way more variety, uh, way less work. You can basically adjust them to whatever you like. They're more crisp, I found. I used to play lots with TV. To be honest, I have this massive TV which I use as a background. And it's a little bit of tricky because you have to figure out the lighting just so everything kind of balance it out and you get the good colors. Because typically what happens when your TV is on the background and it's a little bit further away, you're losing some of the color. So the color is getting fade off a little bit, and but you still have to put something on the background, right? So you still have to put on that TV, so you still have to figure out what put there to make this background interesting. So why, instead doing all the photo shoot, all this crazy stuff just to kind of get this same results you can do with AI? So I would highly recommend to go with the digital backdrops for sure, 100%. Easier, quicker, better results, less work, and you're just saving all the hassle. Because let's say you have client, and I don't know, like, you're not going to bring them at the front of the big TV just to get the background, then you don't even know if it's going to work or not. Why don't you do focus on the client, shoot whatever background you want, and then work on the backdrop later on, and then you can just go absolutely crazy. Okay, next question. I hope that's answer your question. Don't you get skin glare when you're working with don't you get skin glare when not working with makeup artists? How do you deal with what happens? Um so that's what I was saying. You have to find the makeup artist where they know what they're doing. um that's something that I would definitely highly recommend it to check different ones. um so if you typically, what I okay, when it comes to the makeup artist, like, I was always very straight up with them. So if, let's say, they do the makeup and the skin is glowing and it's not working, I just tell them right on the spot, fix it. And like, you see as a photographer what's happening, right? So it's better to fix this, I would say, before the session rather than try to fix that in Photoshop, right? So that's why also I mentioned during that process, make sure that you get the makeup artists who are open to learn and understand. And I train my makeup artists, like, I teach them about photography, I teach them about the lighting, I showing them example. So that's something that yeah, it's a process to finding the person who understands what you're doing and how to basically kill all those issues which you might face during the photo shoot. I hope that makes sense. Okay, do you fear the AI using your clients' faces and other people's stuff? Do you use a private AI model? Maybe. Um, you know what? That's a good question. But okay, so this is something which, it's, we could have a long discussion on this, but people put those images on internet anyways, so it doesn't really matter. um I talk to my clients about this stuff, if they're okay with this or they're not. But 99 point, I don't have clients who just print those images and they don't use them online. Like, we all use this stuff. And I think we're living in the world where, those AI systems, they can like literally scan internet, find headshots, and then do whatever the hell they want with them, right? So can we fight with this? I don't know, but it's a good question. Like, I think this whole AI thing, and that's what also would happen with Ivoro, and I'm sure most of you guys are aware of this. I deeply believe that, like, they could, let's say, use our images to develop this AI um, image generator. Who knows? So there's no regulations. This whole thing is behind, and it's a long discussion. And I know people have different opinions. There's still fight over this, who is right, who is wrong. But yeah, it's something that I think they should be regulated. There should be some privacy. I agree with this 100%. Can we achieve that? That's another question, and I'm not sure about that, to be honest with you. What's your thoughts on beauty dishes? So beauty dishes are great, but the question is, what do you want to use them for headshot sessions, or you want to use them for the beauty shoots? Beauty dishes, they typically have a little bit more contrasty light, and they, I would say they're good for beauty sessions, but for headshots, not really. I wouldn't recommend them. But they're great. Depends what you're going after, whatever type of lighting you're looking for. But still, you can use them. You can test them. You can just figure out what works for your headshot sessions. But I wouldn't go that route if you want to shoot commercially, or you want to have some corporate work using beauty dish. I don't think that would work. Um, there is soft foldable beauty dishes that are pretty big. Yeah, yeah. You know what? Whatever give you the soft light, and something that really can wraps the face around, and that's what I would do. Like, there's so much out there nowadays. I didn't test, I would say, most of it, because there's so much out there. But I think the best way to figure out is just the testing stuff. So if you find something which could work, and it's foldable, and it's kind of like easy to use and gives you the results, by all means, go for it, right? I know some people like testing stuff, and they like try different things. In my case, I used to do that for many years, but at some point, like, I found a system which works, and it's pretty much okay. You know what? This is working great. This is work like a term. Every session gives me the results that I'm looking for, and I don't have to like figure it out. Especially when you're shooting commercially, I think it's changing the game. For those creative sessions, of course, by all means, you should go and test it. But if you're going for commercial work, and then like, you have to be efficient, you have to be quick, you have to have a system which works all the time, doesn't matter where you go. It's something that, yeah, I you want to have something which you can trust, you understand, and then there's no like questioning or trying to figure out doing the photo shoot. I hope that makes sense. Okay, any other questions? No more questions? Okay. I'll wait a couple more minutes, and then if you guys have any more questions, feel free to shoot me. And yeah, if anyone, you're very welcome. As someone, um, I'm appreciated for your participation. And yeah, if you guys have any more questions or anything related to this, which you're not sure, yeah, it's feel free to message me, text me, send me email. I'll be more than happy to answer your question. You know how to find me. uh, it's all there, and I'll be more than happy to answer any more questions. So thank you again. I will be doing another webinar probably within the next month. If you guys wouldn't mind, send me maybe some topics you guys interested in, and then yeah, I'll be more than happy to implement that. So I know there's all sorts of different interests, but if you have something specific, let me know. I'll be more than happy to, follow your lead. Whatever I can share with you to help you out, I'm all for it. So, have a fantastic Sunday. Thank you so much for joining. It seems like we had quite a bit of a group here. So thank you everyone for joining and spending Sunday morning with me. I truly appreciate it. And yeah, stay in touch, and I'll be looking forward to hear from you. And I'll see you guys on my next webinar. Okay, take care, everyone.